Today on Historical Highlights WB.
Oh, Jack, that was
Isn't that amazing? With a silver 7-pointed star and silver edging on the front.
Today we visited the Old Bridgewater Historical Society. We talked to Mary O'Connell, the president of the organization, and learned lots of interesting things about the pieces of history from the neighboring towns in their collection. The Old Bridgewater Historical Society was founded in 1864 and has been holding pieces of history ever since.
This is a Civil War drum. It's an historic drum from the Civil War, and it was used by Isaac Russell Alden, who was a drummer boy in the 3rd Regiment. He was the son of James Alden. And we have all this information here about Isaac. And Isaac served in many Civil War battles in Virginia, including the battles of the Wilderness, Spotsylvania, North Anna, and Cold Harbor in May of 1864. And after the surrender of General Lee at Appomattox on August 9th, 1865, Isaac went home, and it was from home that he mustered out on July 12th, 1865, after a term of 18 months. And after the war, Isaac served as a grocery store clerk for several years in the town of Bridgewater.
And this is from the Civil War?
Yes, it is.
What can you tell me about this sword from the Civil War?
Well, this was once belonged to Captain Charles Churchill of West Bridgewater, and he was a 38-year-old shoe cutter when he entered Company K of the 3rd Regiment of Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry in September of 1862. And the sword is a typical cavalry saber design with a sweeping curve. Both sides of the blade are extensively etched with floral designs, and one side depicts an eagle holding a ribbon that bears the motto, E Pluribus Unum. The base on the side is stamped with the mark of the sword's manufacturer, which was Wilfrid Clobert of Germany. And the grip of the sword is silver, with unique floral designs running in lines from the top to the bottom. Overall, the sword is an exquisite example of special presentation sword from the Civil War. It was normal custom for men in a unit to pool money to purchase a sword for the commander toward the end of the war. So this sword was not used in battle. It was presented to him kind of as a prize at the end of the war by his men.
That's really interesting that they did that for him.
It certainly is. So this sword was not used in battle. It was presented to him kind of as a prize at the end of the war by his men. Okay, Mercy Lavinia Warren Bump. She was born in Middleborough in 1841, and she was a little person. Her height was 2 feet 8 inches, and these were a pair of her boots. You can see they're very small. Her spouse was Charles Stratton, and he was a little person as well, but he was known as General Tom Thumb, and that was his stage name, General Tom. Have you heard of Tom Thumb?
I don't think
Okay,
so.
in the town of Middleborough, which is right down the road, there's a museum, the Tom Thumb Museum. And Tom and Lavinia worked for most of their career as circus performers for the P.T. Barnum and Bailey Circus. At birth, Lavinia weighed 6 pounds, which is within the normal range. But she had a type of congenital dwarfism, what they called proportionate dwarfism. and it was caused by a pituitary disorder. And this is a picture of her. I don't know if we can get it on the camera, but she was very small. She began her career as a school teacher at the age of 16, but then she became a miniature dancer on a Mississippi showboat owned by a cousin, and she enjoyed performing and learned about Tom Thumb, whose real name was Charles Stratton. They got married, and their career continued in the circus. Here are two items from the American Revolution, which goes way, way back, right into the 1700s. And these two items here, this is a powder horn, and this is a canteen, and they are part of the Thomas Cushman collection. Captain Thomas Cushman was born in Bridgewater in 1736. He was the illegitimate son of Thomas Cushman and Alice Hayward. And his military career started during the French and Indian Wars in 1754, but then he moved on to the Revolution. Now, this item here is made of wood, and it's a canteen. It's a style typically known as cheese box canteen, approximately 6 inches in diameter. It's hand-painted black with a silver 7-pointed star and silver edging on the front. And on the back, the initials TC are engraved for Thomas Cushman. There's also a small gold engraved plaque nailed on the back that reads, "Canteen carried by Captain Thomas Cushman of Bridgewater, Massachusetts in the Revolutionary War." And of course, that was added afterwards. Mm-hmm. The powder horn, gunpowder, is what they kept inside, gunpowder. 14 inches long and created from an ox's horn. So it's not plastic, okay? It's actually from an ox. It's linked with the inscription, Thomas Cushman, July 1775. And it's capped with a wooden end which contains block nails. It was presented by Thomas's great-grandson, Joseph A. Cushman. The tip of the powder horn has a carved wooden funnel for pouring the gunpowder into the firearm. So Thomas Cushman, he passed from this life. He died in October of 1820 and is buried in Bridgewater's Jennings Hill Cemetery along with his wife and his stillborn son.
Amazing painting we have back here.
It really is very large, isn't it?
It is.
This is called The Portrait of a Lady in Costume, 1740, although it was painted in 1875. It's a portrait of Mrs. Elizabeth Keith wearing her great-grandmother's wedding dress from Ireland, actually. And it was painted by Francis Davis Millet. Francis Davis Millet, who was from East Bridgewater. He grew up in East Bridgewater, and he was the son of Dr. Asia Millet. And he was a very well-known journalist. And he also was a very well-known artist. And a lot of paintings. I believe there's one at the East Bridgewater Public Library. He was among the founders of the School of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And he was influential in the early days of the American Federation of Arts. In addition to being a painter, he was a sculptor, he was a designer, and he designed the 1907 Civil War Medal at the request of the United States Army. And what happened with poor Francis, is that he got onto the Titanic with friends of his, and the Titanic sank in 1912. So he and his father are both buried in the Central Cemetery in East Bridgewater.
Thank you. That's all very interesting.